All right, this is the Pro Wrestling Illustrated podcast. I'm your host, PWI senior writer, joined as always by my co-host, Brian Solomon. How's it going, Brian?
Doing great. Happy to be here. WrestleMania time.
Yes, special episode, special week. So a very special guest, fellow PWI senior writer, Harry Burkett, who just told me he will be going to his first WrestleMania this coming weekend.
That was supposed to be a secret, Al. Thanks for telling the world.
Sorry, Harry.
But as I said, this close, I could not resist.
Yeah.
I figured this was like once in a lifetime.
Are you really excited?
Really looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah. I'm even going both nights. So here we go.
Yeah. I think we all are. Are we all going?
I am not going because it's my son's birthday weekend. So
okay. Yeah.
Saturday is his actual birthday. We've got family coming in from all over the place. And the funny thing is my daughter lives in Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. And my original plan was I was going to stay at her place over the weekend before we realized all this stuff. She's going to be here for the party. So
yeah, it just works
so
out.
I'm not going anywhere. No, I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah. I was just, telling Harry before we got on that, like, you look back on, especially when I was younger and in some ways even a bigger fan than I am now, and you realize, like, oh my God, that WrestleMania was so close. I totally could have gone to that, and I did. And that's the case for a few of them because, doing them in the Northeast once upon a time wasn't uncommon at all. I mean, this is just like kind of where they would run, right? So, you had 11 in Connecticut. That was relatively, I wouldn't have been doing the driving at that time, but I'm sure somebody could give me a ride. Philadelphia, 15. Did you go to that?
No, I went to.
Did you go to 11?
Nope. I went to 10 at the Garden.
I did too, yeah.
And I wasn't working there yet. And when I worked there through 8 WrestleManias. And I only went to 2 during my time there. That's what. There's always something weird that happens. It's this weird curse I have that keeps me from going. Like every year I worked there was some reason why I couldn't go. But I did go to 17, which was clearly the greatest of all time. So I'm glad I did that in Houston. And I went to 23, the Detroit one, Safeco.
Right.
What was it? Safeco? Is that the?
No, Detroit was Ford Field.
Yeah. Right, that was the Trump versus McMahon one. I was there for that one too.
Yeah. When you were there, was it essentially an open invite? If you could get yourself there, would they pay your way to get there?
See, that was part of the problem. Is by that time, if you talk to the old timers, right, in the early years, the entire company would go to WrestleMania. In fact, if you didn't go, it was bad news. Like it looked bad for you not to go. By the time I got there, when they were really expanding and going corporate and public and all that, it was more like you needed a reason to be there. Like didn't just, as an employee, you didn't just go to enjoy the show. Like, but you could find loophole reasons like why you needed to be there, quote unquote. So like certain departments would send certain people every year to staff WrestleMania, and it was sort of like an excuse to get to go, but it was like a rotating privilege. You didn't get to go every year. And I actually had a year or two where I gave my spot up to other people who had never been because I'm a really nice guy. There were one, and even when they had 20 at the Garden, I couldn't go because my wife was like weeks away from labor, and I was terrified that I was going to be in New York City and she'd be out in Fairfield County, being rushed to a hospital. So I stayed behind for that. So
the answer is you bring her with you.
Oh God, no way.
Yeah, my older son's first WrestleMania, and we were just joking about this the other day. How I tell him, like, you were there for like the greatest match of all time. Shawn Michaels and the Undertaker, WrestleMania 25. He was 3 months old.
Oh man,
we took him across the country, 3 months old. They got the pictures of him like in the little baby Bjorn on. And I'm in the nosebleeds of Houston, which is it. And so we were, it was sort of like my wife and I's annual vacation. We would do it for a number of years. Then when we had kids, that was the last one where we stopped going regularly because we realized, all right, maybe we need to slow down. And then we didn't pick it up again until 2018 in New Orleans. And but for the COVID WrestleMania, we've hit everyone since, and it's been a lot of fun. Yeah. Anyway, again, we're gonna be talking all things WrestleMania. We'll go through the card, maybe give some predictions, look back, look forward, all of that for the biggest show of the year. Yeah, I'll be driving down Thursday. Actually, my WrestleMania week sort of begins today because I'll be at Raw at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn for the big go home Raw, and then SmackDown Friday, NXT Saturday afternoon, morning, and then 2 nights of WrestleMania Raw. So lots of fun. Maybe not nearly as fun for my family, but let's talk about real quick before we get to all that latest issue of Pro Wrestling Illustrated. I got it in my mailbox a few days ago. A really, really awesome cover. I know I feel like I always say that, but this one really jumped out as soon as I saw it. I really love it. And Mustafa Ali has got to be thrilled with this because he's really all over the magazine. And that's my feature. I talked to Mustafa Ali several weeks ago for this. It was originally supposed to be a hot seat interview, and then we sort of realized that the guy is so interesting that there's more to be said about it. So it really became a feature about how he's kind of creating the blueprint on making it on your own outside of WWE. And it was just after this interview that he won the X Division title. But pretty much it's almost, I think he likened it before we talked. His vision was that it was like a TED talk on how to make it outside of WWE. And actually like a lot of real specific details of what his game plan was after leaving WWE. And just super interesting. Lots of other great features in here about New Japan and kind of the new faces trying to carry the company after the exodus of a lot of the big legends. Features on AEW's relationship with CMLL. Kevin put together a feature about rising independent star Shazza McKenzie. We've got a feature about the spate of injuries in wrestling and how it's forcing promoters to kind of pivot from their plans. Certainly, that's a theme this year with WrestleMania and a lot more. Head on over to PWI-online.com, pick up the one issue, or subscribe either to the print or digital version. Obviously, that'll be your best bet. Big savings. There's some more pictures from the Mustafa, and they provided a lot of these photos, and they're phenomenal. That's why we really have a lot of photos in here. Also. Look at his world tour, a lot of the matches he's done. So this is a really fun one.
I like the JFK styled iconography there with the red, white, and blue page with his picture on it. It's really clever.
But and I have the interview that I did with him in audio, and I think we should be able to feature it here on the podcast in the coming weeks. Harry, have you watched any of the stuff that Mustafa has been doing in recent weeks, and any thoughts on it? The whole kind of political candidate. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really neat. Of course, it harkens back to Cody creating the list when he left WWE, and frankly, when I first saw like the mock-up of the cover, like in the crowd at the TNA event, I just thought that was made up. I didn't really realize he was going to be on the cover of PWI. So when I got it in the mail, I was like, wow. Yeah, I think it's going to be remembered as one of those. It's going to be an unforgettable cover, I think, just because it's so unique.
Yeah, and it's the latest guy, and this isn't a dig on WWE, and nor does he really go in that direction. But he's absolutely one of those guys that you think like, man, they missed something with him, because when you see him outside of the way he's featured in WWE, and at different times he was featured fine. They focus more on his kind of athleticism than anything. But when you see these guys get a chance to show that personality, it's like, wow, this guy. And I told him that was like in a lot of ways, this gimmick, this character, this act is tailor made for WWE, and he doesn't get to do it until after he leaves WWE. But anyhow, a super fun issue. Go pick it up. PWI-online.com. Also there, that's our one-stop shop for all things PWI merch. The weekly newsletter, back issues. I know some months back, Kevin unearthed a treasure trove of back issues in mint condition, and there's all kinds of opportunities to order them in bundles and that kind of thing. So head on over there. All right, let's always be kind.
They're in great shape, great condition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're a big.
Kevin told me about it. Yeah, and he said, "I didn't mean to do a sales pitch." I said, well, no, you're offering a bundle, a plastic bundle. I'm going to be the first one to send some money in.
How old is the oldest issue that you got in that bundle?
1985. There were some sports review wrestlings, and it looked like they had just appeared on the newsstand.
Wow.
It must have been in climate control somewhere.
I didn't know that. I mean, I assumed they were within the last 20 years or so. So we had like mint condition magazines going back almost 40 years.
Well, at Kappa, in the older building that was across the street from the current office building, where we had to work in the basement. It was kind of like Taxi, and Stu was Louis in the cage. There was a room off to the side that had all the back issues. And back in the day, if you ordered one back issue from PWI, they would send you these pink and yellow and light blue, powder blue sheets, order forms. So you didn't have to cut into your magazines anymore, which was kind of neat. And I remember going through there. I said, oh, they have 10 copies of this issue left, where the back issues used to be kept there. I don't think they're kept at the office anymore. It's from a different location, but
yeah,
it was kind of neat to stroll through there.
I remember Frank Vitucci telling me at one point, Frank, who's the photo editor of WWE now and used to work for Kappa, that because he used to go back and forth between the offices and pull photos and things still, even when he worked at WWE. And he told me when they were in the old office there, I don't know if you have any memory of this, Harry, or if you were there then, that there was a flood at one point.
I was going to bring that up. I remember Stu telling me about that.
And I know he said, and this was heartbreaking to hear, it made me almost cry. He said that some of the photography was ruined because anything that stuff that they had close to the floor. And I'm wondering if that affected any back issues as well that they may have had. Because like you said, they were in a basement.
I don't remember the back issues, but I remember the photos definitely. It wiped out a lot of Undertaker pictures and midget wrestlers, because obviously they had the midget wrestlers, on the bottom drawer in case any of them came to the office. Yeah. But I remember that was a traumatic at the time. I mean, I think it was a small percentage of photos, but when you lose any photos, it's sort of at least a small tragedy.
Right.
Yeah. Brian, when you were down, this is how we end up on tangents. But when you were in WWE, was there the equivalent for WWE magazines? Was there a warehouse full of mint condition WWE magazines with Ken Patera on the cover flexing?
Yes, actually. So I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Iron Mountain, but they're it's like a service. It's a company that provides storage services for corporations and things. And when I worked there, when I first got there, most of the back issues were still there in the office. I remember that because that was one of those amazing moments when I was opening up a file cabinet and they've got like copies of, going back to the beginning, 1983. They even had some copies of the programs and stuff that they did even before Victory magazine started and everything. So they had a whole bunch. Shortly after I got there is when the move was made to ship off most of the back issues into storage through Iron Mountain. And what they did was they kept like one or two on site just for our own reference. But yeah, they had all that stuff too. And they even went through the phase where they were selling off a lot of back issues, but that was before I got there. Back issues were not a huge deal while I was there for whatever reason. They just didn't really take much of an interest in it. I don't know why. An early issue of Victory, which was the original magazine, in halfway decent shape, sometimes will go for hundreds of dollars now. I know. And I was amazed because, I'm a big comic book collector and I've depressingly seen how any value in old comics have just fallen apart thanks to eBay and the web and the availability of so many things. And so things that I thought were valuable. So I've gotten very cynical about it. But working on the Gorilla Monsoon book, I've been looking up a lot of old wrestling magazines. And I mean really old, like going back to the 60s kinds of things for Gorilla. And I'm amazed at how valuable some of these are, just because I didn't think that there was even a market that much, early issues of The Wrestler when it first started, like 66, 67, 68, going for $200-$300 a piece,
wow,
good condition. Because I was trying to get my hands on one, a specific one. And I was like, I don't really need it that badly. It was, They did one. Stanley Weston sent a photographer to Gorilla Monsoon's house in New Jersey. They did a whole photo shoot with his family. And there's a picture of Gorilla in one of the shots showing off his gun collection, right, that he had. And he's loading up a gun. And they put the caption on it. The caption said something like, some days I just wish I could shoot that Bruno Sammartino guy. And apparently, like, the Western magazines got in huge trouble for that from everyone, from Bruno, from Gorilla, from Vince Sr. They didn't want to work with them anymore because they just felt like this is too far. And in fact, Bill was telling me, Bill Apter, how this was a year or two before he got there. And when he got there, he was trying to smooth things over between the office and WWF to get them to work together again, which he apparently did. But like they really got in trouble for doing that. So that's the issue I was looking for. It was an early issue of The Wrestler, but valuable. Yeah. Some of these are really valuable.
Yeah, I got boxes full, and some years back, I moved them from the attic to the basement, and I still get nervous about it. I mean, they're elevated enough that they should be okay. But we had a little bit of a flood last year, but the water didn't come up nearly enough. So, but
yeah, I have a storage room that I get nervous about because not about flooding, but it's a little on the damp side, and I get a little. Yeah, I have everything bagged up and everything. Unfortunately, I have no alternative. There's just nowhere else that the stuff could go unless I bought like a shipping container somewhere. Yeah. So I have to just cross my fingers and try and keep everything as ventilated as I can.
I wouldn't think of selling any of them now, but I tell my kids, when I'm dead and gone, just sell everything. Hopefully there's something in there for you. Anyhow, let's talk WrestleMania. A lot to cover. 2 nights, WrestleMania 40. So before we go kind of match by match, anything like that, I want kind of like the big look at WrestleMania, and maybe because it is the round number 40. It should feel more significant, and that's what I wanted to ask Harry you about. I mean, when you look back, what I was thinking about, all right, what are kind of the common threads between 10 and 20 and 30, and at all of those, whether it was intentional or just kind of worked out that way, they were all sort of like turning a page, right? I mean, when you think about Bret Hart at WrestleMania 10 and closing with him celebrating with the title, a 20. Eddie Guerrero and Chris Benoit, obviously that ended tragically, but that was also intended as kind of like next chapter. 30 with Daniel Bryan, and now, ostensibly 40 with Cody Rhodes. I mean, does that tell you that this is a fait accompli? That this is going to be about Cody Rhodes? And again, what's sort of the bigger significance of this year's Mania?
Well, previously, with all due respect, like WrestleMania's 10, 20, and 30, while they were terrific, they didn't strike me as any better than the WrestleManias that preceded them or that were after them. And even when I purchased these tickets for 2 nights in Philly, I thought, well, this may just be another WrestleMania, which is still huge. But with The Rock's involvement and the unpredictability of the storyline going into it, and then the layer of Cody finishing his story from last year, I do honestly feel this could be regarded as the greatest WrestleMania ever.
Really? Wow.
That surpassing WrestleMania 3.
Yeah. Do you agree? Brian, do you agree with
that?
That's
not just because I'm going.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's 2 things. I mean, whether it is being promoted as the biggest WrestleMania ever, and whether it ends up being, are 2 different things. And that's one of the fascinating things is like, Brian, you talked about WrestleMania 17, which is like regarded as maybe the greatest WrestleMania of all time. Just kind of a weird number, right? 17, and other great ones have been that way too. So, and then the ones where you do feel like they tried to build as something special. I'd say one of the worst WrestleManias, 32, which was the biggest crowd they ever had in the first time that they ran Dallas with Triple H and Roman in the main event in 2016, right? And just kind of and they tried to make that extra special, and it came short. So it's sort of hard to predict ahead of time, like how well they'll be executed. I guess that's the issue.
Right. Well, this to me, it does have the feel for being one of the biggest they've ever done. This is as hot as a wrestling angle, and we're only talking about what's on the top. This is about as much heat as you could get in 2024. I mean, this is on fire right now, what they've been doing. I'm not trying to say it's a one-match show, but I will, or a two-match show, whatever. I will say that some of the greatest WrestleManias, though, were really carried by the top. Even 17, there were great things on there. There was Angle and Benoit. There was Undertaker and Triple H. There was Vince versus Shane. But Stone Cold and The Rock, My Way or the Highway, I mean, that was the thing that carried the show. And they were coming out strong out of just purchasing WCW. Again, it felt like the company was on fire, even though little did we know, like, that would be the peak, you know what I mean? Yeah. I feel like in some ways, WWE right now is the hottest it has been since that time. I really do feel that. But this WrestleMania actually, because like what Harry said, it could still just feel like just another WrestleMania. This doesn't feel that way. I was thinking about it the other day because I think I was watching an old WrestleMania, a really early one. And I was remembering how back then they really had an advantage to make the show feel super, super special. For those of us that are longtime fans, there was something so special about WrestleMania because you had this card of, oh my God, gigantic matches that you never saw at any other point of the year. It really felt like a Super Bowl of dream matches and dream feuds and rivalries. And that has diminished over the years because now we get Monday Night Raw and SmackDown every week with incredible matches. We get and rivalries. We get pay-per-views or premium live events every month and big matches. And there's the Rumble and there's this and there's that. That specialness of WrestleMania is hard to recapture. So what they got to do now is what they do in recent years is really lean into the spectacle of it. And this year, they have done an incredible job of making WrestleMania really, really, truly feel like that Super Bowl of WWE, that Super Bowl of wrestling. Because there has to be more special about it than just there's more people there than at any other show, right? That we understand. It's the biggest attendance. People come from all over the world. But the show itself should also feel more special. And they're doing it this year. I mean, it's been incredible. I had my doubts in the beginning, as we talked about, of the build of these things. It felt like they didn't know where they were going, essentially. And I started going like, boy, I guess they really did need Vince after all. But they have corrected course, and this has been incredible stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing that is, I think, unique about this sort of round number is when you talk about 10, 20, and 30, where they all aim to make them really special. All of those were kind of down periods in business, right? I mean, I've got to think about,
Yes.
So, yeah, 94, 2004, 2014, to various degrees, but none of those were they an especially hot product. And I think you're right, Ed, it's almost like attitude era level interest and a nice round number.
If I could just interject, because you just triggered a thought in my head that I wanted to mention, but it has to do with what you said. Is, WWE is really good at what they do is like when they look to the past is when things aren't going that well for them. Unfortunately, I hate that it's that way. It shouldn't be that way. And they forget all about the past and focused on the present when things are really hot. And so I think the difference between not so much maybe 30, but like 10 and 20, because they were at the Garden, it was very much about looking back at WrestleMania's glory, and we're tying into the first WrestleMania and our proud history. And it feels like part of that was compensation for the fact that things were not super on fire yet. So they were thinking back to when things were. Whereas this year, because things are so hot and this show stands on its own, there hasn't been a lot of like looking back. You would think like the 40th edition of WrestleMania, there'd be tons of history and, 40 years ago, they always make that stupid mistake, right? But they haven't really been doing that this year, and they haven't needed to do it this year. It hasn't been missed, at least by me.
Yeah. Let's talk about the card beginning with the main event or main events. And I think in the last few weeks, it's fair to say it feels like the night one main event has eclipsed the night two main event because of the incredible work that The Rock is doing. And, whenever I know you love the Mount Rushmore conversations, Brian, but I know a lot of people would have The Rock on theirs, and I never really did, nor do I know that I would now. But because him and Austin always came, they came at the same time. I always gave kind of Austin the edge in almost every category. I think he was a bigger draw, the better wrestler, all of that. I think the work that The Rock is doing now, I mean, I don't want to overstate it, but I really do think it adds significantly to his wrestling legacy because he's been away from the product so long. He is an A-list movie star, one of the biggest movie stars in the world, and it would have been easy for him to come back, as I would say he has done here and there, and not dog it, but just sort of like, play on his star power and get the easy pops. And maybe that was the plan at some point. But I think he saw this unexpected sort of like change in direction with fans really wanting Cody and him being so over as a challenge to really up his game. And at this age and at this stage of his career to do a heel turn. And I think he really wanted to like rise up to the challenge. And it's just been spectacular, the work that The Rock has done. If there is any nitpicking, it's that, it sort of feels like they're building to a match that we're not getting, which is Cody versus The Rock, right? I mean, we're getting it in this tag team match, but that's, I think, eclipsed the interest of Cody and Roman. I know it's all sort of related, and I imagine The Rock will be there at ringside come night 2. But this is all to say, Harry, what do you think of the build-up to this year's main event? The different players. Interestingly, Roman, who is like, for so long has sucked up all the oxygen in WWE, is almost become an afterthought. I mean, like he is, we're seeing him less than anybody else involved in the main event. And in some ways, like not even missing him that much.
Yeah. Talk about totally unexpected. I mean, obviously, The Rock turning heel was not even on the radar for me at all. Zero. It just proves that wrestling is at its best when you can't make real plans. And also, like Brian indicated, kind of showed how hot the product is, that the fans are really dug into the current star, Cody, and them rebelling against The Rock was a real sign of that. And I know The Rock gets accused of overshadowing, but he almost can't help it, being such a big movie star and being a professional. He kind of knows the little moves to do to steal the scene. But in another sense, he's been the ultimate professional to go all in right away with his heel persona, sacrificing the Disney image and not thinking about future projects. Because I do think about a whole generation of people only know The Rock from his movies. Probably many more know.
My students didn't even know he was
wrestling. Yeah, and sometimes I wonder what they would think if they see him on, SmackDown, talking about crackhead Karens and meth head Marys, which I think is all fantastic. Just because
and it's the cursing. I mean, the language.
But I think they could have done a better job of rough waters.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, just hearing you explain all that, one of the things that I think is that he sort of sees this, and maybe this is one of the advantages of having The Rock now at this particular point in his life and his career, is that he's approaching this as, in some ways, as a movie role, right? And the character is this heel, and I think in his mind, I've got to be the most vicious heel that I can, and that means taking the cartoon Moana stuff and throwing out the window, and I'm going to really show myself to be a real piece of garbage. And again, sort of pounding himself. Yeah, I know, right? I mean, like every like bad guy trope, he's embracing.
I don't care if the dog dies.
That is the most surefire way in 2024 to get heat, is to insult a dog. Like so many. So many of the old tropes don't work as well anymore. It's like, you see people online who make fun of their own kids, who hate their parents. So you can't, those cheap shots aren't as strong anymore. But a dog, everybody loves a dog. Dogs are more important now than people.
Going after Cody's mom and his dog. I mean,
Right.
It's phenomenal.
I think that he's got a great combination. So my wife, in her great wisdom, she's the outsider, right? I had on the Rock and Cody thing with the blood and the belt and everything, and it's on TV. I was rewatching it for some reason, and she walks through the room. She stops. She looks for like a second at this thing, and she goes, "Boy, being in Hollywood has really rubbed off on him." And I think that was exactly right. Like, this is the influence of working in motion pictures, being an actor, and it adds. It's not everything that he brings to the table. That's what's so great about him, is he's got the Hollywood thing. He's that professional movie star actor, but he also is somebody who's like steeped in wrestling tradition.
Third generation,
understands. He's third generation. He grew up in the business. He understands. He saw how they drew heat, what they did. He's got a great love for that, of what worked in the past and what you can adapt. This man is going to get a fruit basket from me as a token of thanks for bringing the term professional wrestling back to the damn show. And at least I believe that that's his influence. And I think him and Triple H together probably. But he has given people now the license to be able to say, this is pro wrestling and there's nothing wrong with that. This is what we do. This is what we should embrace. We do it better than everybody else. Let's not call it something that it isn't. So I love that about him. And so he's doing a lot of that stuff. On the Roman Reigns front, I just want to mention really quickly, I think that the overshadowing obviously seems to be part of the storyline, and I do worry that they're doing it too well to the point that it takes the impact away from night 2. I don't think that's going to happen. But I think in little things too, like, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but anytime they're out together, Roman and Rock, the Rock is always, he looks like a superhero, his arms, his traps, everything. And Roman, who's in phenomenal shape, is covered from head to toe in sweats. Have you noticed that? I think that that's because, as great as Roman looks, he's nowhere near as impressive looking as Rock, and they're afraid it's going to make him look bad to be standing next to him, looking like, a cruiserweight next to him or something. But, I do worry that some of these things might be hurting him a little too much and taking the impact away from, if Cody's going to win or whatever is going to happen. But we'll see how it plays out. I have a feeling they're going to pull it all out in the end, but it's interesting.
The other thing that is really interesting about The Rock's involvement at this particular point in time, even in addition to him being the big movie star, because remember, he came back, when you want to talk about like history, he was at 20 and he was at 30, and in both as kind of the returning movie star, arguably a bigger star now than he was there. The difference now is that it's not just that he's the movie star, but he's on the WWE board of directors, right? Mm-hmm. So now he has got a real stake in the success of WWE. And that's why beyond, I think, going on camera and trying to give the best performance that I can, he is, I think, trying to shape this, right? And that's why, like you touched on, the return of terms like of professional wrestling, the return of blood and blading. I mean, I've got to think The Rock had everything to do with that, because this wasn't no Hardaway blood or anything like that. That was very clearly and correctly. I mean, and I've been a defender to an extent of WWE's position against blading, while also holding out that there is a place and time, and if ever there was a place and time, that was it, right? I mean, you're sort of the go home angle. And there's been some speculation. Oh, is The Rock a double agent? Is he, secretly trying to help Cody? And that threw all that out. I mean, that dispelled. Right. It's like, no way.
Right. Right. That did eliminate that suspicion that he was going to help him. I mean, that would, if he did, it would make absolutely zero storyline sense. But
yeah, that doesn't mean he can't come around and have a change of heart or something come WrestleMania weekend. But yeah, beyond just performing really well in the role, it really feels like he's kind of, grabbed it and said, I'm going to help shape this. and doing an excellent job of it. But Harry, this is, here we are several minutes into the conversation about WrestleMania, and we're talking about The Rock and Cody, and not Cody and Roman. When that match gets into the ring Sunday night, where do you think the interest level is going to be? Does it require, and do you assume that the heels win night one, so The Rock is there at ringside on night two?
On paper you say, well, the heels have to win, because now everybody is anticipating what the Bloodline rules match is going to be. And they're talking about it in terms of, hey, it could turn out to be an action movie. Anybody remotely intertwined with the Bloodline is going to make an appearance. It's going to be like the Expendables or something. So I think there's a lot of vested interest in wanting to see this Bloodline rules match. But WWE could say, okay, that's what everybody's expecting, so we can't do that. We let the baby faces win night one. So you can never tell, because when something is too predictable, sometimes they do make a switch.
Do you think, again, that the interest, as much as you can separate them, that the interest with the greater Bloodline storyline and The Rock's involvement has eclipsed just the interest in Cody and Roman? How much do you think Cody Roman 2 remains a WrestleMania marquee attraction?
Probably more than we think, because we're all sort of giddy. We just want to see The Rock in the ring again. We want to see him on night one. But by the time night two comes, that's going to be settled. And I think total focus is going to be on the main event and hoping that Cody wins. And, I'm not as sure as I was 3 months ago that Cody's going to win.
Really? You're less sure now?
We're talking about, I'm less sure now, because how we're talking about, WrestleMania growing over the years, becoming this big spectacle. But so have the other pay-per-views. I mean, think about how big the Royal Rumble has become, and what a big deal even Eliminating Chamber was down in Australia, and the Saudi Arabia shows. Now, if you said something happened where Cody got screwed out of the title, but there's a rematch at SummerSlam or farther down the road, or as Brian would love in MSG, I could see that happening now, because every show is a huge show.
Yeah, Brian, how about you? I mean, I would have been with Harry up till a few months ago. I feel now, I don't want to exaggerate, but man, if they do it again and Cody doesn't win,
right?
I just think that's super dangerous.
That would be like if you did Rocky 2 and Rocky lost again, and then you have to say to yourself, why the hell did we make this movie, right? Because I mean, I love Rocky. I love Rocky 2. It's a great sequel. The only weakness it has is it's completely predictable, because he has to win. But like I've always said, just because something's predictable doesn't mean you don't do it, especially in wrestling. Sometimes you got to give fans what they want. It's the catharsis, because then you go why are we bothering to do this rematch a year later if he's just going to lose again? I still maintain, I always thought, well, maybe I'll change my mind how things play out, that they made the big mistake last
I wanted
year.
to ask you this, because now we're here, right? I mean, the idea was when I was there, and when the 3 count came down for Cody and he lost, my instantly I turned to thinking okay, WrestleMania 40. So that's what this is about. So now this is all a chapter in the story that will pay off WrestleMania 40, where they have to have Cody win. And that's why, for all the missteps of the last year, I wanted to give them benefit of the doubt that there is a bigger vision here. We're here now, right? Yeah. So was it the right move?
Well, my problem with this now is, no, it was not the right move. My problem with it is they seem to be, it's almost like they're hell-bent on trying to make people not like this guy. And or trying to make the fans give up on him. And I don't know why. I mean, I don't know if conspiracy theorists think that they're holding a grudge and all the anti-Triple H stuff. And my response is, I wish I could be buried like this guy's been buried. He's making a fortune and he's on top for 2 years in the company. But it is frustrating at times. And this is the latest example of it, because yes, The Rock is so good that he's making Cody look weak, very weak, in my opinion. Like, they did a great thing with him crying and being so emotional. And then the next week you have The Rock making fun of him and the fans behind The Rock. Like, I don't know. Is that what they want? There are times where I really wonder about that, because The Rock is so good at what he does. I think that, and I almost don't want to put it into the ether for, as something to make happen, but I think there is a very solid chance that you have a WrestleMania 18 situation brewing. They're in Philadelphia. On top of it, those people are nuts and demented. Sorry, Harry. That they're going to turn. This crowd is going to, and they're going to dump all over Cody, and they're going to be in the favor of Rock and or Roman, and they're going to dump on Seth by proxy. I just feel like if that doesn't happen, it will be in spite of everything that has led up to the show. It's like they're playing with fire, and I don't know why. It does confuse me. So I know, like, I sound conflicted here because they are on fire. The storyline's great. It's clicking. It's extremely compelling, but it has, in my opinion, taken away some of the impact of Cody as a top baby face, as potentially coming out of this whole thing on top. That particular outcome seems to have less momentum on it than it did before. So it's been a little confusing in that regard.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I've got to think that, they're having the same conversation as we're having right now, and have to anticipate a lot of this. It's touched on a Northeast crowd, Philadelphia in particular, the Rock sort of, alphaing Cody at every turn. There's definitely going to be some of that energy. I'd like to think that they've got some kind of plan to turn things. Some of it is kind of generational, and I put some of it at the feet of Cody and the way he represents himself. And it's sort of a double-edged sword that I think that kind of vulnerability and that sort of like realism is what's helped make him so popular. But you're right, contrasted against like the alpha male of The Rock, it can be hard to get behind the guy crying about his mom every week. It's easy to say. I mean, I don't have any personal investment in this other than being a fan and covering it. But it just made me very kind of sad or disappointed when the whole crowd was cheering on The Rock when he was talking about Cody's mother. I was like, yeah, this feels wrong. This can't be what they want to be happening. It's really weird. And so I'm going to bring up an analogy, and Harry, I hope you appreciate this because I think you were a fan at this time, but it reminds me in a way of when they did the angle when superstar Billy Graham destroyed Bob Backlund's title belt, and they had him crying on TV. He looked really weak.
Never came back.
It was very uncomfortable to watch. And you talk to people who were fans at the time, and they say that's the turning point where fans got sick of Bob Backlund. They couldn't respect him anymore. He didn't look like a strong babyface hero anymore. And it was just, it was a turning point that he couldn't come back from. And I worry that this is going to be like the Cody equivalent of that, where people start to go like, all right, enough with the mommy and daddy and the crying kind of thing. Like, I hope that doesn't happen because I think I've been in his corner from the beginning, but it could happen.
Yeah, there's still a little more TV to do.
So maybe Cody's going for Cody's going for the Hangman Page vulnerable cowboy demographic.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, it's a dangerous kind of tactic, right? Yeah, especially in pro wrestling, and again, especially contrasted against somebody like The Rock. So we'll see. I mean, like, I'll say this much about Cody, maybe more than any other wrestler I can think of. I mean, the guy executes on a plan, and he's got this story in his head, and I think he is anticipating everything that we're talking about, and maybe there were some things he might have done differently. I think that promo with him crying in the ring about his mom might have been one step too much, because especially when The Rock came right back and said, "No, you're crying for mommy." Yeah, that might have been a bit off. And also Cody's tried to kind of like butch it up some. I also think the beatdown of Cody last week also pushed it a little bit because there was zero like offense by Cody.
Right.
He just got
fight back at all
for whatever it was, like 7 minutes without so much as like throwing a punch. You're just getting beaten. Which was, did you see the other video that they put out on social media where they essentially the production crew says clear and and The Rock just keeps going. It's so great, and that's so clearly. I would think the Rock. The other thing that we haven't really talked about is the new era production at WWE. This is all post Kevin Dunn, right? And so it's all coming at the same time, and that's the kind of stuff that we've never seen before. That is, and I don't know how much is influenced by The Rock or not, but it's all to say that it's great to have some new vision heading into the biggest show of the year, which makes me really excited about actual WrestleMania, because production value at WrestleMania every year is always off the charts, but there is a predictability about it. We're going to have the pyro, you're going to have some old superstar come in, and, somebody's going to announce the attendance. I don't know. I don't know like what we might be in for in this new production era, WWE. One last thing before we wrap on the main event, just predictions. Harry, who wins the tag team match night 1? How does that impact night 2, and who comes out ultimately the winner of Cody and Roman?
Oh, you mean the tag team match, the main event?
Yeah.
I do think that the Bloodline's got to win for it all to work. And but if Cody's going to lose night 2, he definitely can't be pinned in night 1 also.
I bet he is. I bet you that's the story.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah.
So, and night 2.
I'm sorry, again, Harry. We have a little bit of a lag. That's why we have some of these issues. Yeah.
Sorry. Night 2. I do think Cody's going to win, but I think there's a minority, large percentage plans could change.
Yeah. Yeah.
30% chance.
Yeah. And the other thing I'll throw in there is we haven't even, I don't know if I've even said the word Seth Rollins, who was a part of that main event. I mean, and I think we talked about this last time. Is he just, they needed somebody to fill that role? Can he play a meaningful role in the outcome of night 1 or night 2? And because of his involvement, you also wonder if Drew factors in somehow. There are other kind of moving parts to this whole thing.
Yeah, I'm going to be, I don't mean to be boring or predictable, but probably my predictions aren't going to be that different from Harry's. I think, I've said before that I could see that tag match going either way. I've said it on here before, where if the baby faces win and therefore Roman is totally isolated night 2 and loses his title because of that, because he's exposed, then you have momentum for Rock versus Roman, because Roman could blame that on The Rock because he's the one that created the stipulation that screwed him over, right? That said, I don't think that's the way they're going to go. I think I think it takes some of the juice off night 2 if you do that. In a way, it's like you're sacrificing the night 2 main event for the bigger storyline, and I don't know if they want to do that. So I think that I do see the heels winning night 1 tag team match. Possibly Cody being pinned, to add more doubt in there. Maybe Cody being pinned by The Rock, because then I think what you might see in night 2 is Cody should win. I mean, that's what makes logical sense, whether they do it or not. But coming out of that match, if Cody wins the title, you could have The Rock, because we know The Rock's not going anywhere now, man. I don't know. I mean, he may decide that he wants to step back and just take a corporate role, but there's no guarantee of that. So coming out of WrestleMania, you have a potential for either Rock versus Roman, which a lot of people are anticipating because of dissension and that friction they've been building clearly, right? And now Roman doesn't have his title anymore. Or with all this Cody Rock stuff, like we're saying, we want to see Cody versus Rock now. Well, that could be where they're headed too, especially if Rock pins Cody in night 1 in the tag match. Cody wins the belt the next day. I mean, that's some old school booking. I mean, that's kind of like what they did at WrestleMania 10, where you had Owen Hart. Owen Hart pinned Bret in the opening match the night that Bret won the title, so you immediately had that thought of like, oh my God, he just lost. So maybe then you have, okay, now Cody's the champion, and oh my God, waiting right at the door is The Rock now. You know what I mean? So it could go that way too.
Well, I mean, but where would you do that? Would it be Backlash? Because you say The Rock's not going anywhere, but I do think he's got some movie commitments beginning in
I'm not
May,
saying he's going to be on the show every week from now on, right? But he's still, I think we can expect him to be dipping in and out of the storyline for as long as he's physically able, assuming he stays, affiliated with the company. So, I mean, no, probably not Backlash, but it might be like a long-term thing that they build, let's say, towards either a Saudi show or SummerSlam, because SummerSlam has been huge these past few years, doing it in the stadiums and things.
Yeah, and I think to what you're saying, you can sort of count on, maybe not count on, but I think it's a fair bet that The Rock is in part of WrestleMania 41, right, and probably 42, and maybe going forward he leaves that space open in his calendar so he could be part of, and more than just for ego or even money. That he's got a real stake now in it as a
he wants it to succeed, right? And he could still do his fire promos because he could be beaten but not unbowed, because the idea is like, yay, congratulations, Cody, you're the champion. Good for you. I just beat you the night before, and I'm going to beat you again. I'm going to take the belt. So he could still be that cocky heel, and you have a lot more that you could do with it, I think.
Yeah. My prediction is probably not far off from you guys. I'm assuming Bloodline wins night one. I can see something to help advance Drew and Seth. So does Drew get involved and maybe take Seth out of the equation in the match somehow, and you leave Cody there to just get beat up by the rest of the Bloodline? I assume The Rock pins Cody for sure, and sets up night two, where I think it is going to be every bell and whistle that you can have, right? I mean,
it's going to be Avengers Endgame.
Yeah, exactly. And you're going to have Jey Uso, and you're going to have all of Cody's team. I wouldn't be completely surprised if we hear the glass break in the middle of the match, and Austin's out there mixing it up with The Rock. I think it's going to be just nuts, a ton of fun. I think everybody's going to be just going absolutely crazy inside the stadium, and I think Cody pins Roman Reigns, and that is that. Would I bet the house on it? No, but I do think, in particular, again, when you think about, in as much as you can draw on history here, the ending of WrestleMania 10, the ending of WrestleMania 20, the ending of WrestleMania 30, the confetti. I mean, it just feels like if ever there was the time, this has got to be the time. And I just can't imagine, going out with Roman and the belt and pointing in the air. I mean, it would just be.
What's the only thing that puts the doubt in my head? It's the only thing. It's this stupid longevity thing.
The Hogan thing.
With the Hogan thing, which is meaningless. Who cares?
I think they realize
they have this bee in their bonnet, and I feel like that. And how dumb, I'm sorry, would that be? To sabotage all these storylines and the plans just so they could get him to August and say, oh, wow, he surpassed Hogan.
I don't think so either. And I also think that they see that, and with all nothing but respect and praise for Roman, but his flame has waned a little bit in the last year, right? I mean, he's just not the act that he was a year ago. Some of that is being bigfooted by The Rock, but it just doesn't feel like it feels sort of tone deaf to stay with Roman now when you've got all these other hot acts. And one of the things, I don't know if it's hurt Roman, but it's crazy that we're literally seeing The Rock on television more than we're seeing Roman Reigns this week, this season. Right. So I just feel like there's kind of growing resentment, and not in the right way, against Roman not being around. So it just doesn't feel like the right way. It speaks to what a hot attraction and marquee attraction they have. We've talked about essentially one or two matches so far. We have a whole card to talk about. Let's quickly talk about, and it's not another main event. Those are the two main events. The other world title match, Drew and Seth Rollins. Now we know CM Punk is going to be involved at ringside. kind of lost in the news. Another fantastic angle
Yes.
with the three of them on Raw last week, and Punk was great. Drew is fantastic. I mean, Drew really is doing the work of his career now. Seth, maybe that there's some similarity to the other main event angle, is maybe lost a little bit. It's sort of like the way it became Cody versus The Rock. It's CM Punk and Drew to a lesser extent, but Punk was great. Drew's great. I think there's real interest. I'll jump to my prediction. I think Drew's winning the title. I think it's the right move. I'm sort of interested in the placement of the match. Where you put this, and that's another tricky thing with WrestleMania, especially when you've got like these. Well, I guess that's the upside of headlining each night with like the whole bloodline thing. Yeah, I imagine this could going night 2. I don't know if it goes right before the main event. I don't know.
I think it's going to be night 2 because
it has to be.
If
right?
you have Rollins lose on night 1 before the tag match, I don't think that's something they want to do. Like before he's in that main event, he just lost his title. That doesn't seem to, that would just doesn't feel like the move, But I think Drew is going to get it. Punk will probably get involved in some way. Boy, that segment that they did with the three of them, it really is. It's proof of what we all knew already, which is like, if you have the people that really can talk, you don't have to write these scripts for them. You could let them go off, give them the idea of what they need to say. No, not everyone can do that. So the people that can't do that, you don't really let them talk that much. I'm sorry. You let the people talk who are good at talking. And that was the best example of it.
Yeah. Harry, what do you think about the build for this match? And what do you think is happening in this match?
Well, I think Drew is going to win. I agree with that. I like the fact that, he's kind of gone past being frustrated and bitter to getting a little bit of a swagger and a smirk. That's a championship of swagger if I've ever seen one. So I do anticipate he's going to win. I guess we don't really know fully Seth Rollins' physical condition. He's had some injuries and things. Maybe he needs some time off. I mean, he's been world champion for nearly a year now. Pretty busy schedule. So it just seems like an appropriate time to pass it to Drew.
Yeah. The other thing, and I think we've mentioned this in other podcasts, that is kind of potentially the X factor is the Money in the Bank, right? And Damian Priest. I don't see a kind of natural, organic way of doing that here, either with Seth or with Drew. So I don't think that's the opportunity to do this here. I mean, if Drew wins, it wouldn't make any sense that Damian cashes in on him. If Seth wins and retains, I guess you could. But it just doesn't feel like the time to pull the trigger on Damian Priest right now. It's just not his moment. I think we get there, but it's not the moment right now. One thing that was interesting with Punk's involvement is when they threw out the idea of him reffing, and the fans were all about it, right? And I half wondered if like they would just call an audible and say like, well, crap, let's do that, because I do think that the ringside announcer thing doesn't work as well, especially for the people in the building. It means nothing that Punk is like sitting at ringside. I imagine he somehow gets involved, but the referee thing might, would have been a more visible way for him to be involved. But I think they're gonna have a hell of a match. I think both Drew and Seth are the kind of guys who are going to be inspired to steal the show and can. Seth has done that many times before. Drew did that last year with Sheamus and Gunther at WrestleMania. They had that incredible match. So I think they're going to have their proverbial working shoes on, and we'll have a great match. Honestly, a big drop off after that to the rest of the card that I've got in front of me. I don't think either of the women's title matches carry the heft that I think they would have hoped to. Becky and Rhea feels like a bigger deal. Rhea being the biggest women's superstar in the company, Becky being maybe the biggest women's superstar of all time, but she's cooled down a lot too. So, they had a really good angle too, last week. Harry, what do you think about either of the women's matches? The other one being Io and Bayley, which has gotten a fair amount of TV time, but to me, it feels very much like a mid-card match.
Seems like a SmackDown main event, maybe. But I guess Becky Lynch, I think the only way she wins is if she turns heel. Because I definitely see that Philly crowd turning against her if she beats Rhea. So that's the way I think that goes. Now, Io Sky, I see her losing to Bailey. I think Bailey is going to want to complete this full-fledged babyface run. And Io's already been helped by being the women's champion. I think that job was accomplished, and I think she's put herself in the top women. So even if she loses, she'll still be okay, and you could see her coming back and winning the title again.
Yeah, I agree with all that. Yeah. How about you, Brian? What do you think about
well, I have my issues with the Rhea and Becky thing because I just feel like I don't know if it just comes down to the physical aspect of it, is that Becky just looks so unimpressive to me against Rhea when they have them in the ring facing off. Nothing against Becky Lynch. She looks like a child, standing there and looking up at Rhea. And I guess maybe that's that could be part of the angle, like the David and Goliath thing. But that hasn't been how they've been presenting it or booking it. They've really been trying to book it as two equals. And I'm just not feeling that match. I think there's a lot of better things they could have done with Rhea this year. This might have been the year for Rhea versus Bianca Belair or something.
I would have rather seen that too, yeah.
And on the Bianca Belair front, which ties into the Io versus Bailey thing, I wouldn't completely rule it out because now we see Bianca now in this 6-woman tag match, which I think is the way to go for Jade Cargill. It will help her along. It will protect her a little bit. And that's a great super team right there, in my opinion. But I think they have slightly teased a little bit of Bianca being like the bitter sort of babyface turn thing where it's like, the heel turns face, the babyface they've been feuding with forever can't accept it, right? And the babyface winds up going heel. I almost got a sense of that with Bianca, and I'm not sure if maybe they might not have a situation where she turns at WrestleMania and somehow gets involved. And that could even have an impact on her own match, the 6-woman match with Damage Control. I mean, stranger things have happened, and maybe Bianca Belair goes with Damage Control. Who knows? I just feel like there's something there with Bianca that hasn't really been fully explored yet, and it could have an impact on that Bailey versus Io Sky match.
Yeah, I could totally see a Bianca heel turn. I do think it's the right time to do it. I think they've sort of gotten what they're going to get out of her as a babyface run. And just in terms of seeing something there that I think could really work, kind of to a lot lesser extent what the situation was with Roman Reigns for all those years. And not that she was miscast as a babyface, because I think she was a great babyface. But I also do see the potential there for a really good heel. And I'd like to see it. I think Bianca could really be something special as a heel. So yeah, agree with all that. Of everybody in the company, Bianca really is the one this year that seemed like kind of the odd man out, that they just didn't have something for her. I mean, I'm sort of surprised that she gets thrown into this a 6-man kind of in the 11th hour. I mean, it is as you talked about, like kind of a super team, a star-studded 6-person. So it's not at the bottom of the card, but it's in the lower third of the card, I would think. But really, a lot of what's left is Gunther and Sami Zayn for the Intercontinental title. Again, I think this feels a lot less interesting than what they originally would have wanted to do, which is Gunther and Brock Lesnar. I'm not feeling this Sami Zayn inspirational thing, and I like Sami a lot. But a year ago plus, when people are talking about he should be the guy to dethrone Roman, I saw then that what Sami was benefiting was a particular angle and a particular character within that angle, and he even said as much that he's not that guy, and I think we've sort of that was the downside of that incredible angle a year ago that resulted in him turning babyface, is that since he's turned babyface, he's lost a lot of what made him so appealing. He was this great comedy character, and you think about him dancing in the ring with the Bloodline and just how great some of that stuff was, and he was a stooge, and him as just this kind of like earnest babyface, he's fine at it, but it doesn't really do anything for me. So I know there's some people assuming that he is the one to end Gunther's title reign. I'd only be for it in as much as Gunther needs to lose that title to move on to the next thing, which would be potentially a world title run and a main event run. But I think Sammy wins that. Again, all due respect to Sami Zayn, he's had that title multiple times. I think he wins that title. That title, drops in importance quite a bit. So I think they'll have a fine match. I'm not super excited about it. I don't really think much of it. I actually think Gunther's going to retain.
I think he's going to retain also. I just doesn't feel like the moment where he's going to lose it. I almost think like there's more, they're doing this whole like rock, and everything's about Rocky with me, right? But they're doing this whole Rocky 3 thing now with Chad Gable, where he's like the Apollo Creed character, you need your eye of the tiger and this guy will eat you up and blah, blah, blah. I almost feel like there's more to that than we're seeing. And this may seem totally out of left field, more crazy booking speculation on my part. I almost feel like Chad Gable may wind up costing Sami Zayn the match. And possibly, I know he's not European, but his character and the purity of wrestling and all that, it kind of fits in with Imperium. Like I wouldn't be completely surprised if he joins Imperium and becomes like their American representative. It's like I could see him doing a 180 and becoming, he's been this comedy character, becoming this super serious. Look, I'm an Olympic wrestler. I'm a decorated amateur wrestler. I don't want to be a clown anymore. I'm going to go with these guys. They respect the sport of wrestling. I could kind of see that in a way, like, but that, that's fantasy booking on my part. Do I think they're going to necessarily do that? I don't know, but it would make sense to do that.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Harry, any thoughts on the Intercontinental title match?
Well, it's funny you mention that. I guess, Gable could become what Sami Zayn had become to the Bloodline, or R-Truth has become to Judgment Day, the oddball trying to squeeze into the cool faction. I think if Sami wins, I think it'll show his popularity inside the company, because if he does lose, he will cement himself as just another guy, nowhere near Montreal, the Elimination Chamber last year. But like you say, maybe he's already resigned to that fact, and maybe he's just happy to collect big paychecks and still be very popular, but he's not the focus anymore.
Yeah, and he's not a young man anymore. Maybe he's peaked. And none of this is a reflection on his work. I think he's super talented and brings a lot to the table. It just doesn't feel like a really hot act right now, nor a particularly interesting one. Him being out there and I don't know. It just feels like we've seen this act a million times. So it doesn't do much for me. The tag team 6-way ladder match. I mean, this is going to be the stunt spot of WrestleMania. We're going to see all kinds of craziness. Not a lot in the way of storyline here, nor I think can there be with so many teams. But I think it'll be really fun. It'll be a spectacle. I could see a title change here. I think Tyler Bate and Pete Dunne have the momentum. I think people are behind them. I think I could absolutely see them, on top of the ladder with those tag belts at the end of the night. So that's what I'm expecting out of this one.
Yeah, they're great. Title change, I think for sure. It feels like it's been forever with this Judgment Day tag team title thing. In a way, it feels like it's stagnated the tag team title a little bit, because it's taken a backseat to the whole Judgment Day thing. And so I think it's definitely time to put it on somebody else. It could give a team a chance to break out. Like you said, New Catch Republic would be a fine choice. Give them a chance to break out and really become something.
Yeah. How about you, Harry?
I agree. I think New Catch Republic is going to win, unless they go with Waller in theory and they really just want to make us angry.
Yeah.
But New Catch Republic had such a good match against Judgment Day at Elimination Chamber.
They did.
And it kind of validates the golden ages of NXT and NXT UK. And I think for that reason too, I think they go over the top.
Yeah. They also have to get back to Damian being a potential, world title threat with that briefcase. And if they want, finally pull the trigger on the split with Finn and Damian, which they just kind of put on the back burner since they won this tag title the last time. But I imagine at some point they'll want to get back to that. So maybe this is where we plant the seeds for that. Funny that I'm bringing this up so low, because you would think this would be a bigger deal than it feels like, frankly. And that's Jey Uso and Jimmy Uso. It feels a little rushed, and also with all the bloodline stuff in the main event, it very much feels a secondary. I think they could have a great match. I remember interviewing, I forget who, I think it was Jimmy, or was it Jay? This is years ago. When it was harder to tell the two apart pre-bloodline, and kind of ask, hey, what would you think about ever wrestling your brother? And it was clear even then, this was when they were very united as a babyface tag team, that even then that was sort of the dream match, was to work with my brother at WrestleMania. So I feel good for them. I think they're going to be inspired to have a great show. I worry that they're not going to be given the time, that just sort of where this card matches in the card, it's going to get 7 or 8 minutes, and maybe that's what it deserves in that spot. I see Jimmy winning this. I mean, I think he kind of needs it more than Jay does, and I think in as much as they want to keep this storyline going, it makes sense for Jimmy to win in that spot. Maybe also ties into the main event in terms of even more momentum for the heel team, and gives Jay a reason to be by Cody's side on night 2, all that. So that's my prediction.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense to me that the brother,
I agree with that one.
Yeah, the brother versus brother thing is, I guess, the concept itself is what sells the match.
Yeah,
it's almost like the match itself is an afterthought in a way. It feels like something that belongs on a WrestleMania, brother versus brother. People were saying how, Michael Cole had said, he said it was the 3rd time it had ever happened at WrestleMania, after Brett versus Owen, and I forget, there was another one that he mentioned. Jeff and Matt Hardy, and people were all up in arms that he left out Undertaker versus Kane, right? Because in storyline they were brothers, right? And it was basically them admitting like they're not really brothers. Come on, but I mean, it's something that belongs on the WrestleMania card, and I think in that way it'll do just fine. It'll feel like a WrestleMania match. That's okay. Not everything needs to be, a barn burner.
Yeah. Harry, what do you think about this match?
Yeah. And why not give Jimmy Uso the win? I mean, Jay has benefited so much from this bloodline angle, and Jimmy has too, but definitely not to the same extent. And I could see Jay doing the favor for a brother.
Mm-hmm. His big brother. Yeah. And Jimmy has also, I think, stepped up his game a little bit in the build-up to this match. The promo work has been especially good from him. I actually think that Jay's lost some momentum, not through any of his own work, but just there's so much going on that for a while there he was the rising new star, and it's cooled down a little bit. I think just because, again, there's so much going on around him. But I think he could get back up there. If Drew wins the world heavyweight title, I think a Drew Jey Uso program could work. It'd be kind of like, Backlash or whatever, your off-brand a pay-per-view main event. I think would be fine. And I still think in the long term, I could absolutely see Jay winning a world title. But again, so much going on around him that this doesn't, I think, have maybe as much heft as they had hoped. LA Knight and AJ Styles, just around a year ago, that revolution for LA Knight, that big push began with the fans really kind of lifting him up. I remember being there in LA when he was in the Battle Royal, and everybody was chanting and everybody was assuming he'd be the guy that won, and they really did nothing with him a year ago. But 2023, a lot of it was the story of LA Knight. You saw him rise up to challenge Roman Reigns. So another guy with so much going on, maybe a little bit lost in the shuffle. This feels like just a match on the show for LA Knight to beat someone, and for better or for worse, that sort of AJ Styles role in the company now, AJ now getting up there in the years. This is sort of his role to put over the new hot act that who's whatever 42 years old or whatever LA Knight is. But this feels like a 6-minute match that is there for the crowd to chant along with LA Knight.
But I think they've built it in a good way where, like, when he beats AJ Styles, it'll feel like an important win, like something valuable. Because AJ Styles looks really strong. I mean, visibly looks really strong, and the storyline, everything, like, he's coming in as an imposing figure. He doesn't give off this vibe of like I'm just going to be a stepping stone kind of thing that I think fans would see through. So I think it'll be something convincing. As far as the LA Knight thing goes, it's like, look, not everybody can be at the top every moment all the time winning the world title. But I think in the case of LA Knight, I feel like the goal has been accomplished with him, which is they elevated another main event star. They created another guy that they could plug into main events and have as a title contender, maybe a champion. I think that's the goal. Not everybody's going to be the top guy. So he's not leaving that spot anytime soon. I think he's cemented as somebody that the fans love and are behind and will buy in any kind of a top situation. So, this match will serve its purpose of keeping him there, keeping him strong, giving him forward momentum, making sure that he doesn't come off as somebody who's dropping down the card. So it'll serve its purpose.
Yeah, I can see this being an opener for either night, just because he does get the fans on their feet so much that'd be a good kind of energy to open up either of the shows. Harry, what do you think on this one?
You're right. LA Knight has cooled off a bit, but I think everybody in the building is going to want to see him win. And I think it'll be a fun match. And you're right. AJ's a little more physically imposing than he used to be, but I think he's going to give him a tough match. But he's kind of becoming modern day Mikel Cicluna, like the big imposing guy.
Oh, man, I can't do a show with the two of you. We're talking about Superstar Graham, turn Mikel Cicluna. Yes. I agree with all that. Yeah. And I think it's fine on the show. Yeah. Let's quickly, because I know we're running out of time here. So I'll quickly just go over the rest of the card. Nothing too spectacular. You got the U.S. title 3-way with Randy, Kevin Owens, and Logan Paul. Big star power, obviously, in that one. And that feels like the kind of match where it's like, we need something for all these guys. Again, this is what happens at WrestleMania when you've got so much on the cards. It could be hard to find a meaningful spot for everyone. And these are all guys who, Kevin Owens headlined the last two WrestleManias. Logan Paul has been a celebrity attraction for the last few WrestleManias. And Randy Orton is Randy Orton, just coming back from a long layover, one of the biggest stars they've had in the last 20 years. I think you'll have great action here. I don't know what real significance of it is. I can see Randy winning the title just because Logan's not around that much. And then we already mentioned the new 6-woman with Bianca, Jade, and Naomi versus Damage Control. Other things apparently added to the card: Rey Mysterio and Dragon Lee versus Santos Escobar and Dominic Mysterio. They've and in some ways this has been long building. In other ways, it feels like they're kind of rushing to throw it together in the last minute, having Dominic get involved with Santos. And then this isn't official, but I guess there's some talk, and it would make sense. Lashley and the Street Profits versus Karrion Kross and AOC. I could see that being on SmackDown on Friday night. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe a few of these were on SmackDown.
Just want to clarify that it's AOP and it's AOC will not be appearing at WrestleMania.
Celebrity.
I know they have celebrities, but wow.
When I said that, it didn't feel quite right. I was like, but yes, the authors of pain. Yes, not the congresswoman from New York.
And by the way, not to derail things, but there hasn't really been talk of celebrities this year, has there? Have I missed it? I mean, I don't think so.
Meek Mill.
Right, Meek Mill. Okay,
will be performing. I think that's it. And you've got there was some buzz. I don't know if anything's happening of Sylvester Stallone being involved.
But I thought that was not happening now.
Is it not? I could see them. I have no inside knowledge, but him like maybe voicing over an intro or something like that.
Right, because of the Philly thing and Rocky again. Rocky.
Yep. So Harry, anything jump out of you out of those last few matches or anything else that you're looking forward to from the show?
Well, I think if you're talking about the women's tag team match, if it's involving Jade Cargill, that team has to win.
Yes,
she's got to kind of live up to the promise here. And I think everything else is pretty standard. I can't think of anything else. And I think Rey Mysterio winning at any pay-per-view, that's going to go over huge. So I don't see Rey losing. I can just imagine the reaction, especially if he gives Dominic the whipping of his life. That would be nice.
Yeah. I don't know where Bad Bunny is going to be on this weekend, but I could maybe see a Bad Bunny special appearance in that match. It being Mania 40. This is where they would bring out the surprises. There's fewer of them now, right? I mean, this is like where you would say oh, maybe they bring in Hulk Hogan, and maybe they do, but I just don't think it would mean that much. Cena, is one. I imagine we'll see John Cena at some point over the weekend. I mentioned Austin, I'm sure the phone calls have been made. Anything else that you're hoping for or counting on, Brian?
Well, I do think, I think we briefly touched on it, but I think that there's something to be made of that second night main event. I feel like it's really going to be a who's who. It's going to be the kind of thing where you get some people coming away from it going, oh, that was really overbooked and there was too much happening in there. But that feels like something that happens at WrestleMania. I think, especially if you have bloodline rules, that match, you'll very likely see Austin. You'll see Cena. That's going to be the match where you see all that kind of stuff. You'll see people getting involved that have been involved with the bloodline story all along. I don't necessarily see Hogan anymore. I just think he's gotten too old for that sort of thing now. And there's also the fact that there's a large segment of the fan base that is going to boo him out of any building nowadays. It's just something that they can't fight. And that's why any appearance he's been making, it's always been remotely recently, if you've noticed. Like what they did with him at the Rumble was spectacular. But if you'd had him come out and do that live, he would have gotten killed. So I don't necessarily see Hogan, but I do see a lot, maybe even people I'm not thinking of. I see a lot of big things happening in that night 2 main event in terms of surprises, even though we're basically predicting all of them. But, surprises, quote unquote. Yeah.
Yeah, it reminds me of the other person who may be conspicuous by their absence at WrestleMania time, and that's Vince McMahon. Harry, do you?
You will not see him coming out.
I can't imagine you see him. Will he be in Philadelphia? I mean, or do you think he's so toxic that the word is out from TKO on down? Ari Emanuel, you cannot be anywhere near Philadelphia this weekend.
I absolutely agree with that. He's very toxic right now. I think a comment I made in my news column was, I don't think his achievements will be celebrated in his lifetime.
Yeah,
I think he's done great damage, and the sand's running out of the hourglass.
Yeah. I talked to Brian a little bit about it in the last podcast. I'll ask you any thoughts, Harry, on the Hall of Fame and the inductees. This year, we've got Paul Heyman, the U.S. Express, Thunderbolt Patterson, Bull Nakano. Who am I forgetting? Are they putting in the Rock's grandma? There was some talk of
there was a rumor, but it was never announced. There's also Muhammad Ali.
Muhammad Ali, right? Yeah. Any thoughts on this year's class, Harry?
Well, of course, I think U.S. Express was a surprise to everybody. A lot of people forgot they existed as a tag team, although I remember them very well. They were hotter in the NWA and in Florida than they were in WWF, except they were there at that first WrestleMania. So they were part of history. But I guess it's a nice tip of the hat to Bray Wyatt to have his family members inducted. And I agree with the choices this year. I didn't think Heyman was going to happen this year, even though it was Philadelphia, but I guess that's too much of an opportunity to pass up to have it right there in Philly.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know how crazy I am about the new format over the last several years of doing it after SmackDown. Just because it becomes a really long night for the people in that. I was there last year. It was the first show I saw, and I left before Ray was inducted just because it got to be pretty late into the night. So and again here, I mean, you can have 2 hours of SmackDown, and then there's probably 30 minutes to an hour setting up for the Hall of Fame, where you're just kind of like sitting on your hands while they're putting out all the folding chairs and changing the ring, and then each of these inductee speeches. So that event alone can go 2.5, 3 hours. So I'll be there. I don't know if I'll be there for Paul Heyman, just because at that point I'll probably be 6 hours into sitting in that arena. But yeah, it should be fun. What do you think about this format versus the standalone night that they did for years?
I think standalone is much better to make. It makes for a better television show. When they used to do it in a theater, that kind of thing, and it just felt more special. It felt like a special night, like WWE's version of the Academy Awards or whatever, that kind of thing. But on the other hand of it, I think one thing I do like this year is, in terms of making it less like a TV show, is, and maybe this is the post-Vince effect, it feels more like they're looking at, who would be great to put in rather than who would be best for a television show.
Right. Yeah.
Like there's no longer this sense of like, we need a giant star on top, and then we need this and we need that. It's more like, who would be really satisfying choices, I think. And that feels good about it. But yeah, I mean, like, doing it there, and you got those tired fans, and then I've started, like I've said in years past, to be in favor of going back to doing it almost as a closed event, like a banquet or something, and then you stream it even after the fact or whatever, just because, so that it's more respectful and people aren't doing stupid things and booing people and making dumb chants. That is what feeds into when people criticize it and say, well, all it is a TV show. This isn't even a real Hall of Fame, which I think they've made great strides in recent years to make it a more legitimate WWE Hall of Fame. But that hurts it, doing that kind of thing. I can't even imagine staying there through all that.
Yeah.
Good Lord, especially with those speeches and things. My God. It's bad enough when it's standing on its own, getting through some of those speeches.
And even that is kind of a catch-22, because on one hand, you don't want the hillbilly gyms of the world that are going on for 40 minutes about stuff you don't care about. On the other hand, I also don't like when they're so tightly scripted and given,
right. But not everybody needs to tell their entire life story when they go. I don't understand where that need has come from now, where I'm going to come up here and tell you my entire life story now that I'm winning this award. I don't know where that happened.
Who delivered the greatest Hall of Fame speech that you can remember?
Well, people always talk about the Bobby Heenan one as being. A lot of people will say that's the greatest one. It was emotional and funny at the same time. All these things. I know, like the Ray one in recent years, a lot of people said that eclipsed that became the best one ever. I mean,
Undertaker was good.
Although
he went a bit long.
He had his detractors because people felt like he turned into it. Almost feel like you were watching like Joel Osteen or something. It was a little bit. It was a little weird. I don't know. I kind of like that Bobby Heenan one. I feel, especially just because he made everybody laugh, and it had real emotion in it at the same time. I thought it was really cool. I think it was 2004, if I remember right.
I think it was 2005 because I wasn't there for it. I think it was. I went to the 2004 one. That was the New York one, and I think it was LA, and I think Hogan went in that year. So yeah,
and Stallone was there for that.
Right. I'll give you a really weird one. Not that this is the best, but it's one of the ones that I remember because I think it was the perfect tone for a celebrity, and that was Snoop Dogg. Do you remember when Snoop Dogg got it? He gave a great speech. And he really was. It was concise. It was short. It was respectful. He put over Sasha Banks, his cousin. He put over WWE, and he took off, right? And it was whatever. It was 3 minutes.
Me, the speech, if we're focusing on the speech, being the best, but I mean, the greatest inductee for me will always be Bruno. And I was super thrilled to be there for that year. I was there I didn't go to WrestleMania that
Trump
year.
went in that year too.
Yeah, Trump. I was there for that.
The
he did, because we New Yorkers, we knew before everybody. But I was there with my kids, and that was a very special night. It was Trish Stratus, Booker T, Backlund, Mick Foley. I mean, that is up there. That is in the running for one of the best classes, if not the best class they ever did. That was a great, great night.
Yeah. Harry, any thoughts on the past Hall of Fame classes?
I agree with the Bruno speech, even though it went a little long. But I remember thinking, what was this, 2013? I was thinking, I can't believe I'm watching Bruno Sammartino
in Madison Square Garden,
prime time on USA in the year 2013. It just felt so good, so right.
Yeah, and the crowd was chanting his name. Like, it was really special. There were a lot of people who weren't even into wrestling anymore and who had come out for that. There were a lot of old school fans there and a lot of his supporters. It felt like the Garden back in the day, like half the building was Italian. Like, it was really, it was amazing. Yeah. And it felt like it felt like you were transported back in time. And it felt like one last time. I know it's corny, but it was true. Like, one last time that he was main eventing the Garden, because he was the main event of that show, of that Hall of Fame. It was really amazing. Beautiful night.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of going long, I know we've been talking for a long time. I think Harry's got a run. So we can wrap up. Harry, anything you want to promote? Thank you so much for joining us. It's always, I pull out Harry for the special occasions, and WrestleMania obviously being one of them. And anything you want to promote before you head out of here?
It's like when Bill Apter used to pull out the old GC London character with the Mr. Peanut hat and monocle for special occasions. But the magazine just coming out with Mustafa Ali on the cover, because I wrote a column based on something we touched on earlier. What the fans want versus what's best for business. And I talked about Cody and that current situation, whether he should win at WrestleMania, and also Sting's retirement, because I got the vibe that lately people think what's best for business is doing the last minute twist or curve, assuming that makes you watch the very next show, whether that's Raw or Dynamite or whatever that is, versus giving people a happy ending. And that's always the tension. Do you have the feel good moment, or do you screw somebody over so people tune in the next night? But I do agree with both of you. I think there's such a thing as outrage fatigue. Yeah. And I made the case that Sting definitely should have won his retirement match, and you can make that case for Cody at WrestleMania.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I mean, for our predictions about WrestleMania, I mean, if you wanted to make some money, bet on every babyface, in every match, because if you're not going to get all of them, but you're going to get the majority of them. And WrestleMania, in some last couple of years, there've been ones where like maybe one heel has won. So, and that's great. But WrestleMania is about the feel good endings. So expect a lot of victorious baby faces on Saturday and Sunday night. Brian, anything you want to promote before we get out of here?
Yeah, actually, my latest episode of Shut Up and Wrestle, my podcast, which is intended as the WrestleMania week episode. So even when this comes out, it'll be the most current one. I did something I've never done before, which is a roundtable of former WWE employees. I've had people on individually before, but I felt like in light of all the Vince stuff and things that have been people feeling more comfortable talking about the corporate culture and the road culture and the things that they saw and experienced, I had a few people on, and it really wound up being an emotional roller coaster and very engaging. I had Jimmy Noonan, who was the head of WWE security for years. For longtime fans, he was the security guy that looked like Stone Cold Steve Austin that we used to see all the time. Big, jacked, bald guy with a goatee. I had Deb Jasway, who was creative director in the creative services, who I've had on the show before. And I also had Lou DiPietro, contributor to PWI, but also WWE.com web editor for years on the road, representing the company, the web on the road and things like that. And I got them all together from different departments, talking about their memories, their experiences, some good, some bad. It's very nuanced. I want to point that out. It's not just an hour and 45 minutes of dumping on WWE and Vince McMahon being the Antichrist and all this stuff. It's a very nuanced, although he may be, it's a very nuanced conversation of good and bad. And so I think people will, I think, enjoy it very much to check it out. Shut Up and Wrestle, which is at suawpod.com, but you can also get it wherever you get your podcasts.
Excellent. Thank you so much, guys. As always, enjoy WrestleMania. Harry, hope to see you there. Brian, we'll catch up. We got to record a podcast. We got to plan for that after WrestleMania at some point, reviewing everything. But yeah, thanks so much, guys. Enjoy the show. We'll see you again soon.